Shalom, welcome to Tactically Torah. I am Keith Hayes. Today is day 89 of Read the Bible in a Year, and we are in 1 Samuel, reading chapters 18 through 21. Yeah. So let's get after it. It's definitely a few pages worth of reading here. Chapter 20 is 42 verses. Wow. Anyways, chapter 18. And it came to be when he had ended speaking to Saul that the being of Jonathan was knit to the being of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own being. And Saul took him that day, and would not let him return to his father's house any more. And Jonathan and David made a covenant, because he loved him as his own being. And Jonathan took off a robe that was on him, and gave it to David, and his garments, even to his sword and his bow and his girdle. And David went out wherever Saul sent him. He acted wisely. And Saul set him over the men of battle, and it was right in the eyes of all the people, and also in the eyes of Saul's servant. And it came to be when they came in, as David was returning from striking the Philistine, that the women came out from all the cities of Israel, singing and dancing to meet Saul the sovereign with tambourines, with joy and with musical instruments. And the women sang as they danced, and said, Saul struck his thousands, and David his 10,000s. And Saul was very wroth with the matter, and this matter was evil in his eyes. And he said to David, to David they have given 10,000s, and to me they have given thousands. So what more for him, except the rain? And from that day on, Saul eyed David. And it came to be on the next day that an evil spirit of Elohim came upon Saul, and he prophesied in the house, while David was playing the lyre with his hand as usual, and the spear was in the hand of Saul. Then Saul hurled the spear, for he said, Let me strike David, even to the wall. But twice David withdrew from his presence. And Saul was afraid of David, because Yahweh was with him, but from Saul he had turned away. Saul therefore removed him from his presence, and made him his commander over 1,000. He went out and came in before the people, and David was acting wisely in all his ways, and Yahweh was with him. And Saul saw that he was acting very wisely, and was afraid of him. But all Israel and Judah loved David as he went out and came in before them. And Saul said to David, See my older daughter Merab. I give her to you as a wife. Only be brave for me and fight the battles of Yahweh. For Saul thought, Let not my hand be against him, but let the hand of the Philistines be against him. And David said to Saul, Who am I? What is my life for my father's clan in Israel, that I should be son-in-law to the sovereign? And it came to be at the time when Merab, Saul's daughter, should have been given to David, that she was given to Adriel, the Meholathite, as wife. And Michal, Saul's daughter, loved David. And they told Saul, and the matter was right in his eyes. And Saul said, Let me give her to him, and let her be a snare to him, and the hand of the Philistines be against him. So Saul said to David a second time, Become my son-in-law today. And Saul commanded his servants, Speak to David gently, and say, See, the sovereign is delighted in you, and all the servants have loved you, and now be the sovereign's son-in-law. And the servants of Saul spoke those words in the hearing of David. And David said, Does it seem to you a small matter to be a sovereign's son-in-law, seeing I am a poor man and lightly esteemed? And the servants of Saul told him, saying, David has spoken according to these words. And Saul said, Say to David, the sovereign has no delight in any payment of the bride, but 100 foreskins of the Philistines, to be avenged on the sovereign's enemies. But Saul intended to have David fall by the hand of the Philistines. And his servants declared these words to David, and it pleased David well to become the sovereign's son-in-law, and the days had not expired. And David arose and went, and he and his men struck 200 men of the Philistines. And David brought their foreskins, and they set them before the sovereign, and became the sovereign's son-in-law. And Saul gave him Michal, his daughter, as wife. And Saul saw and knew that Yahweh was with David, and Michal, the daughter of Saul, did love him. So Saul was still more afraid of David, and Saul came to be an enemy of David all the days. And the princes of the Philistines went out to fight, and it came to be whenever they went out that David acted more wisely than all the servants of Saul, so that his name came to be very precious. Chapter 19. And Saul spoke to Jonathan his son and to all his servants to put David to death. But Jonathan, Saul's son, delighted much in David. And Jonathan declared to David, saying, My father Saul seeks to put you to death. And now please be on your guard until morning, and dwell in secrecy and hide. And I myself shall go out and stand beside my father in the field where you are, and speak with my father about you, and shall see and let you know. And Jonathan spoke well of David to Saul his father, and said to him, Let not the sovereign sin against his servant, against David, because he has not sinned against you, and because his works have been very good toward you. For he took his life in his hands, and struck the Philistine, and Yahweh wrought great deliverance for all Israel. You saw it and rejoiced. Why then do you sin against innocent blood, to put David to death without cause? And Saul listened to the words of Jonathan, and Saul swore, As Yahweh lives, he does not die. Jonathan then called David, and Jonathan told him all the words. And Jonathan brought David to Saul, and he was in his presence as before. And there was fighting again, and David went out and fought with the Philistines, and struck them a great smiting, and they fled before him. And an evil spirit from Yahweh came upon Saul as he sat in his house with his spear in his hand, and David was playing the lyre with his hand. And Saul sought to strike the spear through David and into the wall, but he slipped away from the presence of Saul. So he struck the spear into the wall, and David fled and escaped that night. And Saul sent the messengers to David's house to watch him and to put him to death in the morning. And Michal, David's wife, informed him, saying, If you do not save your life tonight, tomorrow you are put to death. So Michal let David down through a window, and he went and fled and escaped. And Michal took the household idol and laid it in the bed, and put a cover of goat's hair for his head, and covered it with a garment. And when Saul sent messengers to David to take David, she said, He is sick. And Saul sent the messengers back to see David, saying, Bring him up to me in the bed, and put him to death. And the messengers came in and saw the household idol and the bed with a cover of goat's hair for his head. Saul then said to Michal, Why have you deceived me like this, and sent my enemy away so that he escaped? And Michal answered Saul, He said to me, Let me go. Why should I put you to death? Now David fled and escaped, and went to Samuel at Ramah, and told him all that Saul had done to him, and he and Samuel went and dwelt in Navith. And it was reported to Saul, saying, See, David is in Navith in Ramah. And Saul sent messengers to take David, and they saw the assembly of the prophets prophesying, and Samuel standing as the leader over them. And the spirit of Elohim came upon the messengers of Saul, and they also prophesied. And when Saul was told, he sent other messengers, and they prophesied likewise. So Saul sent messengers again a third time, and they prophesied also. And he himself went to Ramah and came to the great well that is at Seku. And he asked and said, Where are Samuel and David? And one said, They're in Navith in Ramah. And he went there to Navith, in Ramah, and the spirit of Elohim was upon him too, and he went on and prophesied until he came to Navith in Ramah. And he also stripped off his garments and prophesied before Samuel, and lay down naked all that day and all that night. Therefore, they say, is Saul also among the prophets? Drink indicated. Love a morning coffee. And David fled from chapter 20. And David fled from Navith and Ramah, and went and said to Jonathan, What have I done? What is my crookedness? And what is my sin before your father, that he seeks my life? And Jonathan said to him, Far be it. You are not going to die. See, my father does no big matter, nor small matter, without disclosing it to me. And why should my father hide this matter from me? It is not so. But David swore again and said, Your father knows well that I have found favor in your eyes. And he says, Do not let Jonathan know this, lest he be grieved. But truly, as Yahweh lives and as your being lives, there is but a step between me and death. And Jonathan said to David, Whatever your desire is, I do it for you. And David said to Jonathan, See, tomorrow is the new moon, and I ought to sit with the sovereign to eat. But let me go, and I shall hide in the field until the third day at evening. If your father misses me at all, then he shall say, David earnestly asked, then you shall say, David earnestly asked my permission to run over to Bethlehem, his city, for a yearly slaughtering is made there for all the clan. If he says, Thus it is well, your servant is safe, if he says thus, it is well, your servant is safe. But if he is very displeased, then know that he is resolved to do evil. And you shall show loving commitment to your servant, for you have brought your servant into a covenant of Yahweh with you. And if there is a crookedness in me, put me to death yourself, for why should you bring me to your father? And Jonathan said, Far be it from you. For if I knew with certainty that my father has resolved that evil is to come upon you, then would I not make it known to you? And David said to Jonathan, Who would make it known to me, or what if your father answers you sharply? And Jonathan said to David, Come, let us go out into the field. And they both went out into the field. And Jonathan said to David, Yahweh Elohim of Israel be witness. When I search out my father sometime tomorrow or the third day, and see if there is good toward David, I do not send to you or disclose it to you. So let Yahweh do so, and much more to Jonathan. And if it pleases my father to do you evil, then I shall disclose it to you and send you away, and you shall go in peace, and Yahweh be with you as he has been with my father. But show me the loving commitment of Yahweh, not only while I still live, so that I do not die. And do not cut off your loving commitment from my house forever, No, not when Yahweh has cut off everyone from the enemies of David from the face of the earth. And Jonathan made a covenant with the house of David, saying, Yahweh shall require it at the hand of the enemies of David. And Jonathan again made David swear because he loved him, for he loved him as he loved his own being. So Jonathan said to him, Tomorrow is the new moon, and you shall be missed, because your seat shall be empty. And on the third day go down quickly, and you shall come to the place where you hid on the day of the deed, and shall remain by the stone itself. And let me shoot 3 arrows to the side of it, as though shooting at a target. And see, I shall send the youth, saying, Go find the arrows. If I expressly say to the youth, Look, the arrows are on this side of you, get them and come, then as Yahweh lives, there is safety for you and no concern. But if I say thus to the youth, Look, the arrows are beyond you, go your way, for Yahweh has sent you away. And as for the word which you and I have spoken of, see, Yahweh is between you and me forever. And David hid in the field, and when the new moon came, the sovereign sat down by the excuse me. Verse 24, David hid in the field, and when the new moon came, the sovereign sat down by the food to eat. And the sovereign sat on his seat, as at other times, on a seat by the wall, with Jonathan standing and Abner sitting by Saul's side. But the place of David was empty. But Saul spoke not a word that day, for he thought, It is an accident. He is not clean, for he has not been cleansed. And it came to be on the next day, the second day of the new moon, that David's place was empty. And Saul said to Jonathan his son, Why has the son of Jesse not come to eat, either yesterday or today? And Jonathan answered Saul, David earnestly asked my permission to go to Bethlehem. And he said, Please let me go, for our clan has a slaughtering in the city, and my brother has commanded me to be there. And now, if I have found favor in your eyes, please let me get away and see my brothers. That is why he has not come to the sovereign's table. Then the displeasure of Saul burned against Jonathan, and he said to him, You son of a perverse, rebellious woman, do I not know that you have chosen the son of Jesse to your own shame and to the shame of your mother's nakedness? For as long as the son of Jesse lives on the earth, you shall not be established in your reign. And now send and bring him to me, for he is the son of death. He is a son of death. And Jonathan answered Saul his father and said to him, Why should he be put to death? What has he done? And that Saul hurled a spear at him to smite him. Then Jonathan knew that his father had resolved to put David to death. And Jonathan rose up from the table in the heat of displeasure, and ate no food the second day of the new moon, for he was grieved for David, because his father put him to shame. And it came to be in the morning that Jonathan went into the field at the time appointed with David, and a small youth was with him. And he said to the youth, Now run and find the arrows which I shoot. As the youth ran, he shot an arrow beyond him. And when the youth came to the place where the arrow was, which Jonathan had shot, Jonathan called out after youth and said, Is not the arrow beyond you? And Jonathan shouted after the youth, Make haste, hurry. Do not stand still. And Jonathan's youth picked up the arrows and came to his master. But the youth knew not a speck. Only Jonathan and David knew of the matter. And Jonathan gave his weapons to the youth and said to him, Go take them to the city. As soon as the youth had gone, David rose up from the south side and fell on his face to the ground and bowed down 3 times And they kissed one another, and they wept together, but David more so. And Jonathan said to David, "Go in peace, since we have both sworn in the name of Yahweh, saying, Yahweh is between you and me, and between your seed and my seed forever." Then he arose and left, and Jonathan went into the city. Chapter 21. And David came to Nob, to Ahimelech, the priest. And Ahimelech trembled when he met David and asked him, "Why are you alone and no one is with you?" And David said to Ahimelech the priest, "The sovereign has commanded me a word and said to me, let no one know whatever the word about which I send you and which I have commanded you. And I have directed my young men to such and such a place. Now what do you have on hand? Give 5 loaves into my hand, or whatever is found." And the priest answered David and said, "There is no ordinary bread on hand, but there is set apart bread, provided the young men have kept themselves from women. And David answered the priest and said to him, "Truly women have been kept from us about 3 days since I came out. And the vessels of the young men are set apart, and it is an ordinary mission. And also it was set apart in the vessel today." And the priest gave him set apart bread, for there was no bread there except the showbread which had been taken from before Yahweh, in order to put hot bread in on the day it is taken away. Now one of the servants of Saul was there that day, detained before Yahweh, and his name was Doeg the Edomite, the chief of the herdsmen who belonged to Saul. And David said to Ahimelech, "Is there not here on hand a spear or a sword? For I have brought neither my sword nor my weapons with me, because the matter of the sovereign was urgent." And the priest said, "The sword of Goliath the Philistine, whom you struck in the valley of Elah, see, it is wrapped in a garment behind the shoulder garment. If you would take it, take it. For there is none other except this one here." And David said, "There is none like it. Give it to me." And David arose and fled that day from before Saul, and went to Achish, the sovereign of Gath. But the servants of Achish said to him, "Is this not David, the sovereign of the land? And did they not sing of him to each other in dances, saying, Saul struck his thousands, and David his 10,000s? And David took these words to heart, and was very much afraid of Achish, the sovereign of Gath, and changed his behavior before him, and feigned madness in their hands, and scratched on the doors of the gate, and let his saliva run down his beard. Then Achish said to his servants, "Look, you see the man is acting like a madman. Why do you bring him to me? Am I short of madmen, that you have brought this one to act as a madman near me? Should this one come into my house?" All right. That's the end of 21. Shalom.